Theoretical Foundation Part 2, the Theory of Introjection. In the early 1950s until the late 1970s, the field of psychoanalysis changed dramatically. Freud's theory of drive is no longer a focus of interest as a developmental theory, and the leading psychologists such as Otto F. Kernberg, Melanie Klein, John Bowlby, Donald W. Winnicott, Heinz Kohut, and many others are concerned with the mental development of the early mother-child relationship. The principle of this psychodynamic perspective is the small child begins to separate his internal world with his caregivers from the external world. The subjective experience with the primary caregivers, particularly with parents, shapes the characteristics of the internal personal world of the small child. A separation arises between the relationship to the parents in the real world and the relationship of the child to his parents in his inner psychic world. Winnicott and John Bowlby as well have made an important contribution to the development theory with their articles on attachment theory and the theory of transitional objects. On one hand, the mental development of an infant and later the small child is dependent on an intact positive attachment to the mother. But on the other hand, the small child uses the transitional object, for example a teddy bear, as the first not me object and loosens himself from the mother. For the small child, the relationship with the transitional object symbolizes the relationship to the mother. By means of the transitional object, the child learns independently to be alone in the presence of the mother. The child is in a relationship and is, however, alone. He can visualize the mother, thereby representing the person in the mother mentally, and can independently be in a relationship without the mother. One can say that the child has introjected the mother. The mother becomes an introjection. This occurs due to the child's subjective experience with his mother. By means of the representation, the mother becomes a component of the child. In the 1980s, the psychologists John and Helen Watkins developed ego state therapy. This therapy focuses on the structure of the individual person. It assumes that the I is more or less a network of various persons that has been integrated in the I, the child, through childhood experiences. These persons stick together in the relationship and influence the behavior of the adult persons sustainably. It occurs frequently now that the child is so poorly treated that he internalizes not only his troublesome experiences but also the perpetrator. I have often experienced this in my practice with the result that such a negative process creates no opportunities for the development of a person's own self. I also repeatedly experience people suffering psychologically because they feel as though they are outside the situation and are effectively colonized by the introjections. Such persons often identify themselves with the perpetrator and fully offer themselves in service to an unknown person. The path to self-determination is completely blocked of these persons. This process is especially served for persons who have experienced a trauma in their childhood. In the case of Donald Trump, I have demonstrated how his father authorized his person and the son Donald has absolutely disappeared. Through the symbiosis with his father, Donald was compelled to give up his self and thereby become his father. Nevertheless, Donald did not become a copy of the true father, but rather the grandiose father who indoctrinated his son with megalomaniac fantasies. Since his childhood, Donald Trump conducts himself as a product of his father's imaginations. This becomes especially evident in the election campaign and his presidency. I will explain these details further later in this article. An elementary part of my work is always to incorporate decisive aspects of the sociocultural context.